All right. Hello, everyone out there. Um, just to get back to what we were talking about yesterday, or what I was talking about, um, we're going to just get further into the reciprocal system. Sorry, this is taking a little while just to get kind of the background, but I think it's instructive. Now, we were talking about the reciprocal system of theory and kind of my reactions. Um, Now, we're going back to 2001, 2002, and I was first introduced to the reciprocal system of theory from Dewey B. Larson. I read one of his books called New Light on Space and Time, and struggled mightily to get through it, but enthusiastically because I knew that he was on to something after even just reading the first chapter, even though it probably took me almost all day to read one chapter. Uh, I knew he was on to something, so I just kept going and, more or less decided fairly quickly that I wasn't, that this was going to be a thing that I was going to, um, you know, dedicate myself to learning it, um, even though it wasn't really my field. And I was supposed to be, using my history PhD to go get a job. And that wasn't really what I wanted to do anyway. And I felt that this was much more far reaching. The main reactions that I really had upon, delving into Larson's theory was that I was first just really grateful that somebody took the time and really spent their whole life to kind of like carve this out, um, and to, really uh, kind of integrate it with the legacy science that had already existed to kind of show you where you stood, um, where the legacy science stood, and where this reciprocal system of theory, what its alternatives were, what how the reciprocal system saw it. Larson always saw things as conceptual. Um, he understood that he might not always be getting the particulars right in every application. Now, you have to remember that the reciprocal system, it's a system of theory, not just a theory. There is a theory, but it's a system of theory of how to apply the theory in different situations to all subjects. Not just it's not just for physics, or it's not just for chemistry. It is for every subject. But you have to figure out how to kind of hook it in, how to take that subject and figure out where the space and time coordinates are, to be able to make sense of it, because that's his whole theory. The universe is made out of motion. Motion is the relationship between space and time. Space and time are identical to each other in that they are reciprocals of each other. So whatever quality space has, time also has. And motion is the relationship, or the ratio, between space and time. So motion is a fraction of a certain amount of space over a certain amount of time, or vice versa. And so Larson wasn't as concerned whether he was, um, able to create a device that uh, a free energy device or some kind of other device that demonstrated, um, how the theory worked. He was more interested in having the concepts right, laying down the foundation the right way. Um, and so as a result, his, as a result of that, among other things, his books are hard to get into and, hard to assimilate because he's off on a different paradigm. But so that was kind of my reaction after read it, was just very much gratitude for him to just really turn around everything that he was doing and turn his life upside down, for really 60 years to do this, in spite of not getting any credit, being ridiculed, being pilloried, and getting nothing in return but the satisfaction of him, his own work of trying to get at the truth of the matter. But I was also outraged by reading Larson because I was just very angry that nobody had taught this to me before. I had already, whatever, gone through law school, gone through grad school, taken so many uh, classes, even on science. I took astronomy and chemistry, and even in college, and I took some economics and all these history classes and engineering classes, and not to mention all the stuff I learned in high school. And nobody had ever mentioned any of this stuff to me, even though it was all available, because Larson died in 1990, and he had really formed his theory and written his, at least written his early books, before I was even born. And but nobody knew anything about this, and I was kind of just angry that I had wasted my time studying all this, legacy science, where the legacy science, it's, they're able to come up with results because they usually fudge the numbers. They use constants to plug their holes. If they don't understand something, they just plug the hole with, like, put a constant in there, or uh, put it, what, the Ptolemies, way back in the um, ancient period, maybe like first or second century, what they call epicycles, where um, they're trying to predict the orbits of, or the placement of the bodies, the heavenly bodies, but they're coming at it from a geocentric perspective, and so their theories aren't really working out correctly. And so as a result, they're saying, oh, well, this orbit isn't really, where it's supposed to be. So as a result, we're just going to put in this epicycle and say, oh, well, the body was making an elliptical orbit, but then at a certain point it stopped and did a little epicycle, just to plug their theory, just to make sure, to take the actual scientific data and make it match with the theory. It's like they're contorting their theory so that it appears to still explain the anomalous nature of the actual data, observational data that was coming in more and more as the observational methods improved. As you began to get telescopes or other ways of more accurately seeing what's up there, they had to constantly be adjusting their theories to accommodate that, and they would do that even in spite of the fact that it was obvious that what was needed was a whole new theory. And again, I'm not even saying that Copernicus's theory is correct either, because those people, Newton and Copernicus and probably Galileo and some of these other people, they were probably Masons too, and so they had an agenda that they were trying to pursue as well. So I don't really know, I don't really know what to make of that, and I don't think Larson really addresses all that, even though he has extensive stuff on astronomy. But that's kind of the weakness of Larson, is that he sometimes he just assumed that the basics of astronomy were correct, and then he plugged his stuff into that, and that was a mistake that he made, which I think was at least partially corrected by Bruce Perret with his second Reciprocal System 2. Now, so those are my reactions. One, gratitude for this person just putting their whole life into this and doing it regardless of whatever credit he received, but then also just an anger that nobody showed this to me any time in my life before, in the first 30 years of my life or whatever. But then also, I felt like I had kind of a new lease on life, in terms of, I was upset, maybe even at myself, because I didn't really understand physics and chemistry and astronomy and these subjects to the extent that I wanted to, and and even math too, and that I didn't grasp the big picture of these subjects, and so this gave me a lease on life, and it happened in kind of a backdoor way, where I spent several years just reading Larson, I mean, because he has about 15 books, and they're all very difficult reading, at least for me. Slow going, and you have to read them over and over again. You really have to read at least a few of them, even just to have the big picture of the book. And there's really, in my mind at this point, there's really like 4 major works that I'm going to cover to start with. And he's got other important books too, but the 4 major books are, and this is another thing that very inspiring about Larson, especially for a person who, went to law school, went to grad school, didn't really make anything of either one of those things, because I just wasn't, didn't want to be plugged into this matrix of lies, and I saw through a lot of the lies. I mean, even before I went to grad school, I knew it was a crock before I even started. So I spent 7 years in grad school, basically in a tug of war with this university. I'm trying to extract what I want to extract, and they're trying to extract out of me what they want to extract out of me. So it was like, I knew that I was in a fight with the university itself, and I was trying to get a PhD out of it and to learn my own curriculum, and they were trying to like steer me into this pre-made structure that they had already had, so that they could extract as much from me as they could. And so, it was kind of a 7-year long tug of war. But, what inspires me a great deal and should inspire other people about Larson as well is that in my mind, his four major books, um, that we're going to cover to start with in this course, um, they all came out when he was in his 80s, or even, I think he died at age 92, 91 or 92, and so they all of his books came out in like the last 10 or 12 years of his life when he was in his 80s. So if you think you're washed up and you think you don't have a chance to make the kind of impact in your life that you want to, just look at a person like Larson, where you know he spent he's you know he spent his 80s feverishly at work putting out these magnum opuses, of that people still haven't grasped what they're pointing at. But that's very inspiring for me as a person who's not yet in his 80s. I can still make something of my life or whatever. So that's a very inspiring thing of Larson. But another thing that's I think is uh, instructive is just like I was saying, I spent 5 to 7 years like pretty much studying nothing but Larson. And it's kind of interesting because he has a book that's called Nothing But Motion. But this period of my life where I was really studying nothing but Larson, I have so many pages of notes, typed up notes, which I'm eventually going to be offering, on this channel, is a lot of the notes that I've taken on various subjects, because I have a lot of really good notes for things like for Larson. There might be, a 500-page book, but I've got it boiled down to 50 pages of notes that, you might not have the time to go through a 500-page book that's impenetrable, but maybe you would be willing to look at the 50 pages of notes, at least to get started. The notes aren't the be all end all. You still ultimately probably want to refer to the original source, but they can at least get you to wet your whistle. So, but the last point that I just want to make in this short talk here is that, okay, I spent these years. No, his most important books are the trilogy, The Structure of the Physical Universe. This is just in my opinion. Other people might disagree. But The Structure of the Physical Universe, it has 3 books. One is called what is the first one called? I guess it's called Nothing But Motion. And that the first one, it's just on like kind of physics, atoms and photons, and he had problems with his photons, I have to say, but reference systems and just kind of the basics of his system. Then his second book in that trilogy is called Basic Properties of Matter. That's on chemistry. So he's got chapters in there on all kinds of things about chemistry, compressibility and interatomic distance and heat expansion and charge, magnetic and electric charges, and so just kind of the basics of chemistry. And then his third book there is called The Universe of Motion, which is his book on astronomy, which I found the most fascinating. But now I'm really having to kind of reevaluate all that, and especially in light of the RS2 stuff, flat Earth stuff, I'm a total agnostic on all that. I don't know what the shape of the Earth is, if any, and uh, you know, it could be globe. It could be a globe. Could be a hollow. Could be a pancake. Could be a platonic solid. I think all four of those things are in the mix, but Larson doesn't even delve into that. He just pretty much assumes that that it's a globe, and so he plugs into that. But Bruce Perret goes a little bit further than that, although not far enough. Anyway, those are the three of the trilogy. And then his posthumous work, which was published by his wife after he died in 1995, those books all came out in the 80s. I think the first one is from 79, and then Basic Properties of Matter is 87, and the Universe of Motion is 84. And then the Beyond Space and Time is from 1995. He died in 1990. So it's not exactly a complete work, or he may have been working on some other things, but it still holds together pretty. It pretty much seems like it's a finality. And then but the main point I'm making is I studied all these. I guess I'll be having to talk about this in the next video, but I studied nothing but Larson for this whole period, and then I went back and I looked at mainstream legacy science books, and I was able to understand them just from having read Larson. So I found that to be very important. Okay, we'll talk very soon again, and we'll see you later.